Here at the Michigan Heroes Museum, we have hundreds of exhibits set up dedicated to telling the stories of Michigan heroes. Today we're going to talk about Colonel Ralph Hauenstein of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Colonel Hauenstein played an integral part in World War II. He was General Eisenhower's chief intelligence officer. One of the things that I find absolutely fascinating is that Colonel Hauenstein, before World War II, he worked at a newspaper, and throughout his experiences in the war, he learned enough to form the U.S. military intelligence programs, and he helped found what would later become the CIA. Due to the efforts of the intelligence community and of Colonel Ralph Hauenstein, the Allies were able to win a decisive victory in Europe, and I think you're going to find his story absolutely fascinating.
Colonel Ralph W. Hauenstein was born on March 20th, 1912. By 1934, Ralph was working as a reporter for the Grand Rapids Press when he was asked to be a public relations officer for the U.S. Army. After months of training, Ralph was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Reserve Officer Corps. He then volunteered for a 30-month stint with the new Civilian Conservation Corps and was sent to the Cadillac, Michigan area. Ralph was in charge of a CCC camp composed of an all-African American group. Many of the men he commanded there had been veterans of World War I, and he learned to be a leader of soldiers during his CCC time.
As an officer in the CCC camps, I found that was wonderful training. It was marvelous. As a matter of fact, General Marshall said during the war that the greatest thing that ever happened to the officer corps of the United States was the CC camps, because it trained all these officers who were immediately ready to go into service.
In the fall of 1940, Ralph was called to active duty and sent to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, near Chicago. It was his first assignment as a public relations and intelligence officer.
At that time, this is an incredible thing, there were only, in the military, 28 intelligence officers, I think about 14 enlisted officers and about 50 civilians constituted the entire intelligence corps of the United States Army.
Less than a year later, he was selected to go to Iceland in a secret move. The German Air Force began sending planes to take photos and to bomb Iceland. On one such mission, the Americans shot down a German plane. When Ralph searched the wreckage, he found a German code book for their Enigma coding machine. Ralph was sent to London with the code book to give to the British, who were attempting to crack the Enigma code.
We were bombed up here, he said, by the Germans. He said, I said, oh, what casualty, who, where, what? He said, well, I don't know, but there's bodies all over. And that was the first report I got, of course. And later on, I know what body we were talking about. Well, they bombed the cemetery. The cemetery, naturally, of course, had bodies thrown all over it.
In 1943, Ralph was sent to London and assigned to the planning of Operation Overlord, known as D-Day. For the next several months, Ralph worked as an intelligence officer, gathering information about the German army in France.
This map of German-occupied France, which was found in Ralph's things by his grandson, shows us the importance of the intelligence community's role in World War II. On this map, it shows where every unit was. They worked with the French resistance and other intelligence communities to decide where each division was, whether it was in Calais or on the beaches of Normandy or in the Mediterranean.
Ralph also worked on the Phantom Armies, which were fake army units that were created to fool the Germans into thinking the Allies had over twice as many troops than were available in Europe. They used fake radio traffic, inflatable rubber trucks and tanks, and even cardboard people to convince German spies. The largest fake army was built around General George S. Patton in southeast England. Patton's presence convinced the Germans that the real invasion would occur at Calais, France. Through the efforts of Ralph and the intelligence section, they kept roughly 500,000 German troops from fighting at D-Day on June 6, 1944, which led to the successful landing of over 150,000 Allied troops.
Was there a sense that you knew we were winning, or was there a sense that we might lose?
When we landed 156,000 men that first day, we were going to win.
Once the Allies broke out of the Normandy region and started across France, it was only a couple of months until Paris was liberated. Ralph was one of the first Americans in Paris. In early 1945, the Allies attacked into Germany, and by April, the war was almost over. Ralph was with the American soldiers as they liberated the Dachau concentration camp near Munich, Germany, and witnessed the horrors and atrocities committed by the Nazis. Germany surrendered in May 1945, but Ralph stayed in Europe. He helped to set up the occupation forces after the war to help rebuild Germany. After nearly 4 years of overseas service, Ralph was finally sent back to the United States and returned to Grand Rapids, Michigan. He became a very successful businessman and was a great philanthropist all his life. On January 10, 2016, Ralph passed away at 103 years old, having lived a very full and rewarding life of service to others.
What did you feel in terms of at the end of the war, your part in it?
I never thought of myself as a part of it particularly. I was only one of the many, one of millions, that's all.